Welcome back. I'm happy to see all of you. Last time we had quite an intense session, which I already also reflected on later. There was a theme about presence. I do feel we have more presence now, so thank you for that. Because it would be a waste to have the thing passing by without being able to pick it up. So that's quite useless then. But I do understand that the information is not quite common, let's put it that way. That it's not easy for the mind to, certainly if you come from a worldly busy day, to attune with it. I do see that challenge. But there's always a possibility to relax and then let the words work inside of you. So it's not about big effort or big concentration or something. It's more about relaxed presence. And for sure, today will be a very similar thing, although slightly different. Seeing the theme. And you will hear me sniffing a bit sometimes. And I'm also in my relaxed chair. I had the cholera passing by. I have to call it that way. And so that took me away for a week, 8 days. It's about 8 days ago now. And body doing fine. But it is, as I wrote some things about it on Facebook, it does quite some things on the mind level, in the subconscious psyche, and it's good to be aware of that. So the adaptation is still going on, and I'm fine. I'm happy with that. But I have to adjust my way of teaching a little bit. Not that I expect it to be less, but different. That means there will be more mind, the intelligence in the mind, and less chi, because there's less chi in my body also. But it's important that we train ourselves not to become dependent on a certain expression of who we are. And this dependence is, first of all, false. And second of all, it creates a limited view of reality with also limited possibilities for healing. I remember once, I think 15 or 20 years ago, I'm sure Alka and some of you remember it. I was teaching a lot of cosmic healing. I've been writing a book with Natakshia, and then we did these healing sessions, sometimes with 100 people in a room, and then bringing the light of the stars down, and then it was very strong. Sometimes people fell off their chair because the energy was so strong. But at that time, I was starting to get into this more subtle connection. So I was in this big group in Austria, and then put my hands on my heart and I opened for the field, and nothing came. So instead of this huge beam of light that always came, nothing came. And for the first time, well, I had to swallow a few times, but for the first time I was okay with it. I was okay with it, which was a big step for me. And I just relaxed and stayed. And I couldn't feel anything happening because I wasn't able yet. I didn't have the sensitivity yet to be able to read into the bodies where they were. I was kind of dependent on the energy. But then afterwards, people told me there was so much more even happened to them, even though they didn't feel chi. That's what I mean. We have to explore our experiences of what life and energy, but also touch and body work is. And that's what I want to do today. Because most body workers, the results of their work is greatly dependent on how they perceive reality and how they use their mind. So that's a bit of a shame. You're a body worker, but it's determined by the mind. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's simply that almost everybody is asking the right questions to explore this, not taking all kind of assumptions, but understanding why we do these things, how we do these things, and then also understanding why the result is the way it is, the logic of that. Or if you have the feeling like the results are rather weak or small, then that is probably also to do with our mindset and our experience of time space. So that's what we're going to do. I'm sure when we go through this, you will ask yourself, but isn't this the same than the deep dive or sinking into the vital darkness? Or yeah, same, but different. If we, the deep dive is very much consciousness brought into the different layers of the mind, but using the body as a portal. So the withdrawal of energy into the darkness is an important tool there, and it's quite earth related, point related, certainly the first initiation. But we can explore these similar things or same things, but now not from energy, not from earth, not from body, but from mind. And then we start to notice things that we've never noticed before. That's why we do this. Alke, would you mind reading the text? You have it with you? Alke reads the text, always very nice.
I'm just opening my mail.
Mm-hmm. So we are doing this to, as I said many times before, we need another type of body worker in this world. When we talk about the divine feminine and more the using the earth consciousness, that is true, but our ability to do this is in general very low. Let's put it that way. Most body workers are either mind and energy workers. I told you that before. And then a lot of people start realizing this, and then they don't want this, and they compensate it by withdrawing into the darkness, right? That's not good enough. That's good that we go from the circle to the point, but we can't stay there forever. So there's an equal richness in this darkness than what is in the light and what we see in the projections on the outside. But it requires sensitivity and another perception of our body and of what touch and life is. That's why we do this work.
Okay. Mind like water. Touch needs a place to manifest. Each touch represents the sacred moment life descends into existence. Of man and earth coming together, a miracle that happens constantly but is mostly unnoticed. In order to be a conscious participant of this miracle, the mind needs to become like water. Water is one with the will of life. That's why it can effortlessly change, manifest, and dissolve. Let the mind be like water, keeping it in the stillness of eternal consciousness. The water mind follows the way of the Holy Trinity. When it focuses on something, the mind takes the form of this, like ice. When the form dissolves in energy, the mind becomes fluid like water. When the energy dissolves into emptiness, the mind returns to the sea of consciousness until life and touch spontaneously re-emerge. Follow this cycle of life, and that what needs to be will be, and that what needs to go will go. Heaven, earth, and nature will happily be your guides.
Thank you. It's good to listen to it together. One sentence that comes to me now is this: in order to be a conscious participant of this miracle. That is so essential in the work that we do. The miracle of aliveness, being in the experience of touch. Most people know touch in their dualistic way. And we all are more subject to this than we often understand or that we realize. Dualistic touch. I touch you. I feel the sofa on my elbow. There's always two, the toucher and the touched. But these are like the two ends of one thing that is much bigger than that. The tendency is to bring touch to a response of the nervous system, right? But can you be touched, and can you touch without the nervous system? Please reflect on that for yourself. Because you all have been touched, sometimes even more deep, without the sensations that fit with this nervous system. Now, the question is, how far does this nervous system go? Of course, our touch goes much further than our nerves. There's the nerves, but in the Vedic tradition and also in the Taoist tradition, the nervous system and the glandular system and the chakra system and the aura are one thing. You cannot put them apart. That's not possible. So that's why, while being outside of our physical body, and a lot of people who have been deaf and come back, the way that they talk and what they have experienced, they are in touch, they're experiencing touch, not in their physical body. Then who is experiencing this touch? Because the more subtle the energy becomes, the closer the toucher and the touched get together. Whoa. What we need to be aware of is this discriminating dualistic way of perceiving touch. Discriminating meaning between the touched and the toucher, between the object and the subject. There's nothing wrong, of course, with the physical touch, but it's like in my text where I describe the moment of the ice. That means when we touch, there will be a moment that the nervous system points out the place of touch in three-dimensional space. Right? You put your finger on your cheek. Even if I do it myself, it's impossible not to notice it. You will feel it. If you touch yourself somewhere, I want you to check that out for yourself. If you touch a part in your body, there is something in your mind that goes there and wants to check out the precise location of where you're touching. Is that so? Right? So if you touch your cheek, you can't have your attention on the other cheek. You can think about it, but you won't have the sensation of touch. Right? Now there's one side that you physically touch, and there's another part that you think about. If you think very strongly on the other side, you will feel the sensation of the touch in your right hand, in your other hand. So this is a natural autonomic nervous system response. The moment we touch, immediately it will be photographed. It's the eyes that I call. The eyes is like the mind trying to make a fixed overview idea of what is happening there. You know that you are touching, but for instance, if you were sitting there and you feel touch on your cheek, but you're not doing it, that would change the whole story. No? Or somebody scratching your head like Margriet is doing now. But imagine you're not moving your hand and you feel something scratching your head. That could freak you out, right? So we don't only want to know the precise location, but we also want to know the source of it. We want to know what touches us. If it is an object, that's pretty okay. Oh, we sometimes have this, like me now. Oh, it feels like something's touching the back of my head. Ah, it's just a blanket behind me. I'm fine. This is different than if it was a cow or a lion or something. If it would be a living thing, that would change the situation. Check that for yourself. It's a very different thing. Now, this three-dimensional experience and this checking out, is it okay? Okay. Goes very fast, of course, but it goes that fast that we have very superficial consciousness into that. What we need to practice is the difference between the mental awareness of the touch and the pure experience of the touch. These are two different things. It's good that we can become aware of how the mind is, the process of the mind, which we can't stop because it's autonomic. But we can be less and less involved into it with our focus, with our consciousness. So if you do this a few times and you start to know the game and you start to touch different places in your body, just try for yourself every 2-3 seconds touching another place. And let's do a little game on that. Go to another place and watch this mechanism first of localizing the place. You know that it's safe. Do you only see the place, or is there also a need of pictures? If it would be a stranger touching you, you would need extra information. For now, this is not necessary. Now see if you can feel the touch without, and at the same time, to make the picture of the place where you touch and the three-dimensional position, to let that go to the background. What do I mean by that? So that you feel the touch now, but you don't name face, or you don't see a picture of a face. And your attention goes less and less, like your inner eye focuses less and less of this new place where you touch. With some practice, you can do that. Now make sure that you're not going somewhere else. And make sure that you still have the experience of the touch, the pure sensation of the touch. Now it's possible that the mind has a bit difficulty with this because its normal way of functioning is taken away. There is no more object now. Or very vague. Now, while you keep doing this and don't think about where to touch, I want to ask you a question. Who is touching? And who is experiencing this touch? Don't ask the question in your mind. Let the places where you touch, the focus on them, get more and more vague. Maybe you can start to notice it is always the same one perceiving the touch. And where is this I who is perceiving the touch? All the details in each unique touch remain, but they're now not analyzed by the brain, by the analyzing mind. If you relax deeper and deeper, you will start to feel that these places get closer and closer together. Not in space, but in how you experience them. The three-dimensional experience of touch has disappeared. It first became psychic. Then it doesn't have anything to do with the physical body anymore. It becomes noetic, subtle mind. Now stay in this state and see the relativeness now of the places where you touch. You could call that leg or cheek. But different than when we started, these places are not limited to their three-dimensional position. Time has completely disappeared. Nice one. Let's slowly come back. Every time if we sink into this depth of reality, we experience how time and space in our experience, well, changes completely. And yet we have this compulsive way of approaching the body. And certainly this class is an encouragement to let that go. Person lays on a table and you sit next to them around the level of the navel or the heart. Then you look down 45 degrees and put your hand on the... That's boring. That's boring. You mess up the whole thing before you started. because it's a compulsive way of doing it over and over again, and it will become boring, or you will find all kind of new tricks that keep it, well, enough fascinating. But you can change all of that by not getting into that, by letting the body of the client in your body roam freely in the room. Sometimes people are, well, the whole coaching or bodywork changes when you don't sit in your chair where you always sit. You sit on the floor, or you sit next to them on your knees. Then people look very surprised suddenly, because they thought, oh, this is the way it happens, you know. But you understand, in this, the way it happens normally, we limit down the natural evolution. And that's a shame. So it's my encouragement to be spontaneous in that. The tendency, certainly as a body worker and a healer, is this screen view, where we come from the outside approaching the other one. Why? Why don't you lay on your back and you come from the inside of the body in this person? Why not? There is no reason why we just were in what we were doing. This whole thing of going down and approaching three-dimensional way wasn't there. We were in a very different state where everything became, well, was open, was possible. And we can wait until this happens. When we sink into the fifth dimension, then, of course, everything is so united, then it happens. But we can do this from the beginning. Staying out of these old habits of touching, the boring body work. We make that boring. Under this three-dimensional experience that we need first to land on the body, if we want to physically touch, is always this fourth and fifth dimensional reality of unity. Now, most people, they will come to us, they desperately need physical touch. So we have to give them that. And a lot of them even need this physical pressure because they are not incarnated. So it's good to follow that request. But there is a risk in that we either get kind of stuck into the physical dimension, possible, and that, as I mentioned in the beginning, that the vital darkness, but not so vital, this one, that the darkness becomes our hiding place. When we are aware of these higher dimensions and we're not attached to a certain entrance, a certain need, at a certain point, I need to place my hands on the body of this person. If I'm completely open, then maybe I can sit with my back to their back. In the meantime, we talk or we breathe together a little bit. I don't know. But then I go much more directly. Something that in taking bodywork classes, but also in teaching bodywork, sometimes I was really touched with, not so in a positive way, with the for granted of touch that a lot of people have. How much they take it for granted. There's not so much people who see and understand or feel the sacredness of this, or of touching another person's hand or putting a hand on a shoulder. This is sacred. The moment this happens is when life enters into existence. But it's something we don't need necessarily to know it, but to feel it, to experience it. That's why in my text I talk about this sacred moment where humanity and earth come together. Earth and humanity were one from the beginning. But this was in the fifth dimension. So it took a long, long time. And certainly also the preparation of Earth and the other life force that we need also as our fundament. Took a long time before we could physically meet into existence. Passing paradise, which was in the fourth dimension. There's never been an Adam and Eve here in the third dimension. But while incarnating, it's this moment when humanity and Earth coming together in a self-conscious way. In existence, that took a long, long time. Now, every time that we touch, we get reminded to this holy moment of what happened there. If we stand still, then we can very consciously experience that. Okay, let's do another feeling exercise. You can lay down or you keep sitting up as you wish, but make sure that you stay awake. Relax deeply. scan through your body. Let go of tensions. Or when you put your hand in a place that you choose, put it down. And notice the two poles, the sensation in your hand and the sensation in the place where you touch. Might be a faint feeling, but it will be there. Is it only sensation, or do you see a picture? And is the picture of the hand? See if you can also connect to the picture of the imprint of the hand, being more the yin. Now the mind cannot stay a long time with these pictures, so it will either need to repeat it or it will go somewhere else. The touch is evaluated and confirmed as positive, so the autonomic response will start to mellow down. Can you feel how the two start to come together? Don't focus on the energy today. That's not what we train. Focus on the mind's consciousness. We want to become aware of how it works. Let these two parts come together and let the pictures of hand and body gradually disappear. Don't do anything, but let them dissolve. While you stay with it fully. Gradually it will move into a pure sensation. An experience of aliveness without pictures. Notice that the location, the three-dimensional location, has also become very vague. You can go back to it, but it's not on the foreground. See if you can let the location become even more vague. That means that you would not really know where you're touched unless you activate the observation function. Object and subject get together. Let the sensation become stronger of aliveness, of pure touch. Of course, energy responds to this, but we're not focusing on that. better. Notice that the location becomes much more vague now, not clear where you are touched. No need to switch on that function. You might feel that the experience of space is not limited now by the inside or outside of your body. It becomes all one. And yet you're very present. And then lift up your hand now. Move your hand separately from your physical body. And let it land in another place and go through this process once again. Object and subject. The toucher and the touched. The pictures, the thoughts. Most of the time we have like 80–90% if we touch ourselves is in the toucher, not in the touched. So make sure you feel also the yin, the one who's touched. Is the toucher and the touched differently? And again, where is the one who is perceiving this touch? Or who is perceiving the touching? Okay, beautiful. We want to check if there's any questions or sharing in this moment.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How is this melting together of the toucher and the one being touched?
Mm-hmm.
How is it different than when we do this from sinking it more into the earth and letting go of the form instead?
Yeah.
Because I didn't quite get the difference from doing this from the mind or doing this from the sinking. Or is it the same?
When what we train now is to become aware of how we use the mind. But when we sink into the earth, we use the earth principle, certainly there. But we also use the mind, for sure. I talked a little bit about it, but not so much in detail, I would say, in the deep dive, in how we use the mind and to become aware of how we use the mind. So as I said in the beginning, it's same, but different. Yeah.
So it's more what you described then, the mind like water, not the focus of the mind, but more the field of the mind, the fluidity. Is that it?
That's one manifestation of the mind. So we practice these 3 different stages of the mind when it becomes solid, but that we don't get stuck into this solidness. The example of how we fix ourselves in time space is an example of the mind being fixed and blocking the energy. The other one is how the mind can follow the process of change and energy. And the third one is when the mind dissolves into the emptiness. So it's this, as I call it in the text, the divine trinity that the mind is constantly using to appear and to disappear. Sometimes in specific thought, which is good in itself. There's nothing wrong with thought, but thought is a very easy hook on for attachment. When we start to when we can become more conscious of how the mind is functioning, we can start to use it as it's meant to be, as a divine instrument. Las Carlos was very firm that the mind is divine, but it's not, how do you say? No, the mind is holy, but it's not divine. The mind is an expression of God, and what God uses to create, to manifest. But if we understand the nature of the mind, and first of all, our attachments into it and how we use it, then a lot of things can change. That's why. What was the experience? Or other questions?
Yes, I want to share something, Dirk.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced also moments that the observer also disappeared.
Right. Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I'm sure I wasn't asleep, so it was as if the whole field was. I wasn't on one edge and I wasn't on the other.
Right.
And I also wasn't up here, or where is the observer? I don't know. But there was, I was in I don't know where.
It's
But
called, because it's called everywhere.
Yes, yes, somewhere, everywhere.
That's the kind of where that you were.
It was a really quiet experience and state.
Yeah, and it feels like infinite.
Yeah,
but the presence is very profound at the same time.
yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Right.
It was really special. Thank you. Yeah.
Very welcome.
I have something to share also. For me, it feels like I cannot stay still. I start moving. And that's what I do in the morning when in bed, when I become awake, I start moving, how my body wants to move and touching. So it feels the same.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the exercise also?
Everybody could feel this one coming. The question. No, well, it doesn't really matter. It's fine if you move. Of course, if you move, it will become more difficult to get into this unity of the two, because there will rather stay a form. If we move, the form stays present. It can, at a certain point, dissolve, because of course it's a dynamic form, but it's more challenging to do it. Same also with touch or moving touch. It's much more difficult to sink inside while touching and moving. But of course it's possible.
And I wonder, what if suppose bodywork was like interactive?
It is.
But the way we practice it, one person lays down and he still stays quiet.
Sometimes. That's again a fixation that is, well, in the belief.
Shouldn't be, eh?
No, that's what I'm saying. It's not the way it's supposed to be. That's part of the therapeutic scene. And we have to get out of that. Right? And that complicates the whole process of what we know as healing, because we've fixed the field of possibilities way too much. But in your case, it's important even more to let the one who reflects on your moving and touching go. It's already less than before. So, I mean, just move and touch.
Yeah. That feels the right thing, and I don't think about it. It just happens.
Then it's good.
I wanted to share something. The moment, the difference between being touched and the touch dissolves, it was like I wasn't only touched in the place I touched myself, actually. It disappeared in a bigger sense of being touched in other places in my. So that was special. Yeah.
Great. That's what I named this three-dimensional location, which is something very tough and that we have inside. The three-dimensional location of where we are touched and where we are touching also. There's a strong controlling mechanism on top of that. And if that can go, then the pure experience of the touch can become stronger and stronger. And it's like a whole body experience then.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. That was it.
That's another reason of why we are doing this, because it's the mind and this automatic response of the mind on touch that keeps this under control. Let's put it that way. Mm. And if we don't notice it, then it's very, very limiting in our experience of what touch and body work is.
I'd like to share something, Dirk. I felt from the sense of playfulness, a strong sense of emerging innocence.
Mm-hmm.
And this sense of innocence I found quite beautiful, connecting to innocence in this connection with the mind and the body, which is something which felt very new. This presence of innocence in the mind with the body, and it felt very sacred, very that's all I can say.
Thank you for sharing. Right. For most body workers, the mind is somehow the enemy. It's the one who spoils the party. But that's out of ignorance. It's because we don't know what the mind is. And once we start to openly research, like, oh, this is happening. Oh, this is what I do. Why do I do that? You know? All the automatisms that we have in our mind functioning need to go. They need to be reevaluated at least. And then a big chunk of them will need to go because they're just assumptions and they're not based on anything. So to notice them is another reason why we do this, what we do today. It's the three-dimensional mind that keeps our participants in this miracle, as I was describing it in the text, that blocks that. It's the three-dimensional mind that does that. And our attachment with it, in it, of course. So, when we start to experience that this touch is not just the toucher and the touch coming together, but there is a much bigger process that comes together in this same moment that is repeated over and over, because it is the appearance of aliveness into existence. Touch is the most direct way to address that. Suddenly, there's nothing. There's no matter is not alive yet, and then suddenly it has ripened into the noetic and psychic realm, and it is ready and now touches matter so that it wakes up. That's a miracle. That has happened, you could say, long, long ago, but it's happening right now. And that is what we forget. It is happening anyway, if you touch or not. Anyway. But when we touch or are touched, we have the possibility to remember it very consciously. That's why we do this. It's just a different perspective of the same simple touch. It's not different than what I said before when I rub with my back on the sofa here or on my seat. Who's touching my back? The sofa. I mean, the sofa is not doing anything. There is no toucher, right? There is no toucher. Are you sure there is a toucher here? Or it's just an appearance of two poles coming together? You know what I mean? Did the sofa touch me? No, I'm just experiencing aliveness in my body in a specific place. If I let that go, that feeling of aliveness will spread through my whole system, although it's a simple sofa. Doesn't really matter then. We don't need a body to be touched. We don't need a body to be touched. We are here because we are touched by life, and we are alive because we are touched by God. Can you feel the touch of life right now? Check for yourself. Can you feel the touch of life right now? You can go to something, like you could go to your breath or your heartbeat, and so that's ways of doing it. But can you feel it directly? Because I can assure you that life is touching you right now. Where? Everywhere. It's like an aliveness that enters your whole being constantly. Goes through your ether body. That's the most dense layer before it becomes physical. But it's like something that is constantly, that you're eating constantly. And can you feel the touch of God right now? Nothing we can imagine there. And there's no need of a specific place to find where. Allah is everywhere, right? Now, the tendency will be for a bodyworker to say, but this doesn't have anything to do with touch. Well, this is the most essential touch, what we're talking about. God, life, then physical touch. But are these three different? Or are they again more the ice and the water and the void, where it all comes from? And it is the mind that moves through this process constantly. Everything appears and disappears. I was talking before about the need of a different, you could say, profile of a body worker. That is the person who is in touch with life constantly, but also who gives up his need to change the other person. Because it's simple, you're not smart enough. I'm not smart enough. You don't know what to do. You act like you do sometimes. Sometimes a person comes to you and you act like, yeah, you got this. But in reality, you don't, because it's not in your authority to do that. But you can be with this person. And that can be in 1,000 ways of different ways of touching, or not. Because if we become one with the mind, that means our thinking mind and the cosmic mind become one. As I write in the text also, then life through your touch will show you what needs to stay and what needs to disappear. It's something I wasn't really aware of, but the last, I would say 3-4 years maybe, going through a lot myself, a big change in my own mind and consciousness. And I think I've never was so little invasive on the process of other people. But I've never seen people changing so much than now. While for sure is I didn't change it. Not at all. This is what I'm talking about. If life flows through you with the intelligence of the divine, then things are like bathed in this original intelligence. And that's where you can have the whole ecosystem starts to change. It starts to adjust because it remembers the original alignment and how it was meant to be, fitting between heaven and earth. So maybe you just put your hand in a certain place, or you were pressing very hard on another place. It's okay. But to do this from the invitation that comes from within. And I'm saying this as I think I lost a little bit of some of the skills, but I consider myself to be a very effective body worker. I mean, doing the job of body work, then seeing the results, a lot of happy clients. I know that. But if I look at these people's lives, that was quite painful for me to have all these very happy clients that were really dependent on me. Because sometimes they felt miserable, they come to my practice 1 hour, they feel great. But then if I started asking questions about their lives and their perspective of life, then I noticed that not so much was changed. And I was part of the reason why not so much was changed. I took away often a good learning possibility, like a hernia or a headache. What is the person comes with you who has migraine, have a very tough headache. It's not up to you to solve that. It is natural and human to be compassionate to this person's suffering. But you're not attached if he keeps it or not. And that is very different, isn't it? That is really tough for therapists. Are you fine if they go out and the pain is worse? Not easy. Well, that's the part in you that wants to score somehow. You could say, no, but my client expects this. You can't help that. You can't change that. But it's about your attachment, your reaction to that wanting of them. Maybe your hands will go to their head and do something about this migraine or headache. But maybe nothing happens whatsoever on that level. It's not about following your intuition. That's too slow. Not that. It's a very direct expression from your body. Right? Intuition and instinct are one. But my experience is that the biggest changes happen there in that state. Because now you're not the therapist. You could say life is the therapist. And that is a much bigger source of intelligence. And it functions through you. Okay. Let's do another exercise. You can do this on yourself. It's going to be a little bit longer, or you can do it on somebody else. Whatever you like. It's a bit variety on what we already did, but more in detail, the 3 stages of the mind. So you place your hands on a certain place on your body. Sorry, it's good to take your hands off first and connect to the whole experience of your body. Not specific in your hands right now. Once feeling your whole body, listen to the place that calls life right now. And let your hand go to that place. Feel the 2 poles, toucher and touched. Now we use something extra in the mind. Not only the identification, but now you sink inside with your awareness. And be attentive if you meet shapes. This might be a shape of the tissue that you touch, or the organ, or the rib, or a nerve, but it might just as well be an abstract psychic shape, like a dark line or a red square or whatever. It's important that you just use the shape. The mind becomes aware of it. Then once you have noticed it, it's like you've taken a picture, make sure you have the thought out of your mind, but you use the picture to sink into the experience. Let this happen naturally. If you get a new updated picture or a new updated form, you take that, make sure you keep that picture out of your head. Of course, it very briefly goes there when it's produced, but then you have the direct experience under your hand. The picture in the beginning is always static. And then the picture might either start to dissolve, withdraw into the subconsciousness, it's also possible, or it becomes energy. The fixed form disappears and the eyes become water. In the ice stage, things are fixed in position, little movement. The energy stage, these same forms can run through each other. Let the form evolve into energy. Does the density changes? Do the colors change? Does the shape change? Till a certain point, not happening always, that the energy starts to withdraw. into emptiness or stillness. Chi becomes consciousness again. If you don't feel the shift to this emptiness, check if there is another place where your hand is expected. Don't think about it, just be natural. It can be combined with taking another position. That can be on your physical body, but can also be in your subtle bodies. And then you do the same thing there. First, integration of the two poles, which goes faster and faster now. But then picking up the form in the mind. Except if these forms do not make any sense to you. Some have more shape, some have more color, but perceive them in a neutral way. No need to think or feel anything about it. All information is in the picture, the elemental itself. So when you pick it up, it will shortly go through the brain, but then make sure you don't start to reflect on it. Focus on the experience under your hand, connecting it to the elemental. You make that very conscious, both the touch as the element and the elemental itself. And that is enough. Then there's stillness, staying with that. You have no clue why or what. You know this is right. Ice to water, water to steam. but then also back to water. Sometimes this water, this energy appears in another layer, not necessarily into the physical body. And sometimes in a new form. Not always. Why not always? Because we are addressing elementals that come from a disturbance and unintegrated energy in the system. They don't need replacement, they need integration. Is there a place in your subtle body connected to the place you were touching before? A place that naturally extends from there? And can you touch that place in your subtle body? Do the same thing. In the state that you're in now, when you use your hand, you will feel the touch like physical touch. Not the same intensity, of course. What is the shape? What is the element of the picture that comes up? It can be already more energy, more fluid. Or there is a fixed shape. That needs to melt first. Okay. Let's slowly start to come back. Mm. Any more sharing or questions? I told you what I wanted to tell you. So the floor is yours. I had the feeling you picked it up now, deeper. Mm. Anybody?
Yes, maybe I want to ask something. At a certain point, you talked about the elemental or the form.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
What exactly do you mean with that, with the elemental?
Well, if it's a picture, it's an elemental. Mm. Yeah, it's of course, if you see a beautiful flower, but even that is an elemental. It's a thought form, I would say. But we can look at the quality of it, or we can look at the shape of it. That's what I mean. But as we know elementals, most of the time we know them by the negative charge that they hold. And if we enter into this state and we ask for where does my body need touch, then probably you go to a place that needs, well, discharge or needs touch. Attention is energy, but there is a certain form of disbalance that pulls it there. That's what I mean. Well, I enjoyed the depth of certainly this last one. It was nice. Any more questions? Sharing?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for the words. In the last part, well, the word that comes into me is very clear and simple experience. And on the other hand, it seems that at the, I don't know if I start thinking then in a form, but that in my lower body, it's much more clearer than here. So it's like there's something of, how do you call it? Like there's in a sink, there's a bit of I don't know the English word, troep.
Garbage.
Yeah. I don't know what it means, but it's strange to feel that we work with the mind, and in my lower body it's very clear and simple, and in here it's the garbage.
There is much more conflict here.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, that's what you say.
Yeah.
So, well, and if we start to research the mind, the head will start to respond the most, because that's where we have jammed it all in. We have specialized ourselves in this is the brain mind, the I mind, as I've called it many times before. So of course that is going to respond for sure. We shouldn't be surprised about that. But not paying attention to it also.
No, it's not that attention, but now and then I thought, hey, there's garbage, or I don't know the word. But,
yeah, it gets better all the time. That is for sure. If you bait it into this field, it gets better all the time. Being consciously confused is very healing.
Okay, thank you.
But it's an art, consciously confused.
Yeah, stay confused and not stick to it, you mean?
Yeah, but be transparent that you don't know, that you have no clue, but you're completely present.
Yeah.
And there lies the medicine.
Yeah. Okay.
This is very rare, what I was just saying. Somebody is completely present and confused. Try it out. Because you're not confused, you just don't know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's very clear, and there's something going on. Yeah.
But it can be that there's a lot of different things coming in, and you see that, oh, okay, good. But you accept that. So there is no conflict or confusion.
No, it was not conflict. That's true. Yeah. Thanks.
Welcome.
I really like the white of the field, something like that.
Color white or the white?
White.
Oh, white, yeah, okay. Oh, thank you. I also enjoyed that. It opens a layer into the mind. You can feel that. Yeah, which is makes the unity with God very easy. Let's put it that way. That would be the best description.
Can I say something?
You're doing it.
Okay. I was so deeply, deeply touched. Only this.
What touched you?
The deep love, when I have words, the unconditional love. That nobody does something, it happens. It's so nice.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Hi.
Mhm.
I can feel I can get past the addiction of touching, physically touching, but I can also feel it's a lot harder to not get addicted to the touching people in another way. That's something I can feel pulling me in, touching people,
Mhm.
which my ego hooks.
Oh yeah, okay. Mhm.
You can touch people, yeah. Who That's a lot harder to get past, or
Sure. I think it's too early to get past it because you're so hungry for the experience of it.
Mhm.
So first you have to satisfy this hunger.
Hunger Games, yeah.
No, I was, as a body worker, when I learned shiatsu, for instance, I was a complete addict. Completely. I just wanted to grab people and throw them on the floor and do something with them, you know? But people liked it somehow. And I had missed this so much, just like you. This is what I like when I see you doing it. So the pure desire of touch is beautiful. It's just to watch when the wanting, because that when the wanting comes in, that flattens the experience down.
Yeah.
So then it's like but then also like this, it becomes a bit more scientific.
Yeah.
So to watch these two, but not to put a brake on the drive to touch other people. I believe that is pure.
Mhm.
If you put the brake on that too soon, then it becomes a control.
Yeah, well, sometimes in the lessons I have the feeling like, yes, but I want to have the experiences you tell us not to have or to get past. But I need to run into the wall so I know how the wall feels, and then something.
Yeah.
But
I don't
that's a
know
kind
if
of
you have to run into the wall, but that's what I said. The drive, the longing to have the experience is in itself pure.
Mhm.
It is the fear for the depth of intimacy and surrendering that is required for that kicks in the controller. Mm. So if you stay pure into this and stay aware of the control mechanism that is behind it, then it's fine, I think. If there is transparency, it's fine. If it's hidden, it becomes tricky. It's like the therapists who became very good in not feeling aroused during a treatment. Yeah. That becomes very unnatural. It becomes very unnatural. Okay. Then I wish you all a nice evening. And a lot of joy playing with this. If you rewind this, you might think, well, what have we done today? Did we do anything at all? You might think. But yes, we did. It is subtle, but I'm sure that if you start to apply this, it's going to be very profound. And just like all the other classes, is just take it with you in your daily life, and it does its work by itself. Sleep well. Bye-bye.